How's it going, everyone? This is Flash with Flash Weather here to share my 24-25 winter weather forecast. This is something I do every year. I usually try and get it out in October, but based on how this year is shaking out, figured it'd be wiser to wait until November. Kind of waiting and watching how certain teleconnections behave. So what you're about to see is kind of a compilation of thoughts for the December 1st to February 28th, 2025 time frame. And really my thoughts will be, my ideas will be more conducive to the Mid-South region, specifically for Middle Tennessee, West and East as well, but really Southern Kentucky, South Central Kentucky, Middle Tennessee. So let's just dive in, and what I'm going to do is this will be kind of a two-parter. The first half, I'll give you a look at some of the indicators. I'm looking at some of the teleconnection forecast. We'll look at some NOAA products together and kind of take a sampling of like, okay, what is the atmosphere from all these different parts of the world and the oceans for that matter? What are they telling us right now as to what we can expect? And then I'll give kind of a month by month breakdown of what I expect will happen here locally. All right, so when we talk about making a winter weather forecast, the first place to start is the operational SST anomaly chart. This is valid as of yesterday, November 14th. And you'll see a couple features. We're going to look at the Atlantic Pacific Oceans. I always start with the equatorial Pacific, specifically looking at Nina 3.4, what's happening at the heart of the equatorial Pacific. Cooler temperature anomalies, that indicates a weak La Nina. Boy, the Atlantic is on fire. Gulf of Mexico down to the Caribbean, way above average. There's some upwelling pockets the further north you go, above 30 degrees north, probably because of tropical activities, but there's also some warmer pockets off the coast of New England. Very cold Baja California, but note the cold blob off the Gulf of Mexico, a pool of cooler temperature anomalies just sitting there. There's our negative PDO. I think it's called the Pacific Decadal Oscillation. That's kind of that signature. You have warm basin-wide positive temperature anomalies underneath that, which is interesting, all the way from the Sea of China all the way to the Pacific West Coast. We'll see how that evolves over time. But before I go any further, let me just tell you this in layman's terms. Where you see positive temperature anomalies, SSTs, those are more conducive to areas of ridging. Similarly, cooler pockets, cooler temperature anomalies, it's more conducive to troughing. Where those set up, how the axes shape up. That is why we will often start here and look at the ENSO. We're in a La Nina watch per the CPC. We'll look at figure 6 and over here you got your SST anomaly. So again, combining 3.4, this graphic with, overlaying it with what we were looking at here. And we'll be bouncing around these charts today, but you could see anything below 0 is you're approaching La Nina territory. Anything above it is El Nino, and we're clearly negative here. How negative? Well, this was issued October 18th. You could see we're almost to the negative 0.5 line, which anything between negative 0.5 and negative 1 is weak La Nina. So that's why they should watch. We're going to be flirting with it here. Some models, some ensembles take us beneath that. But we're looking for this bold, see this bold line here? That's the mean. We barely touch it before we start to moderate January, February, March. So kind of like we're approaching weak La Nina for the first half of winter, but then the second half we're moderating closer to 0. That's La Nada, which tells me that the equatorial Pacific water, this will continue to warm. This actually makes sense when you look at the mean. Look how cold that equatorial Pacific was between September 1st and November 10th. Look at those shades of blue and purple compared to now. You can see they're already starting to moderate. So we'll probably see this go to white here as we go out in time. So ENSO may not be what really drives the winter this year. And when I say ENSO, again, I'm talking about the waters on the equatorial Pacific. We're going to have to look elsewhere to figure out how our weather is going to evolve for December, February, and January, February. Let me get that right. All right, let's keep going. NAO index. We're kind of neutral right now. We're about to go way negative, and that makes sense. We're about to have a pattern flip, a cold shot. This time next week, we're going to see temperatures 40s for highs, below freezing. We're going to finally see some 20s on the board. So this makes sense. Negative NAO is basically, think of cold troughs coming down, invading the eastern third of the U.S. Will we see a positive NAO or a negative NAO? Will we see that blocking? Really, like, let's go back here. Really, you have your block in the Hudson Bay region, kind of closer to Greenland. Will we see blocking that enables cold air to dive southeastward? It's hard to know for sure, but this is a good sign as we approach December. I really think that what we see here is, the start of meteorological winter, December 1st, could be seeing some seasonally cool air just in time. It's hard to predict out so far in advance, but we'll be watching this throughout and seeing it. We want this to be negative. So, all right, let's keep going. So we talked about INSO. We kind of talked about the NAO. Let's talk about a few things. We talk about monitoring the SSTs, what's happening in the oceans. We also need to talk about what's happening vertically in the atmosphere, different parts of the globe, and then putting it all together and seeing what we got. So the East Pacific Oscillation, this is off my Deep Fried Mind blog back when it was active. This was a forecast I made for the 18-19 winter. There's a couple of Pacific teleconnections we look at, the PNA, which is Pacific North American Oscillation, the EPO is the East Pacific Oscillation, the TNH I'll mention here shortly, but these first two, we're looking at basically what we're trying to assess is what will the weather be doing south of the Gulf of Alaska? Will that help unlock or lock the cold air, the Arctic air around the poles? We want that cold air to be dislodged for it to have a chance to come down south towards us if you want snow, because I'm going to speak from the vantage point of a snow lover, always. Positive is not good. You see that large and persistent storm in the Gulf of Mexico, strong jet. It really keeps the air moderate, mild, and it floods the U.S. CONUS here, pretty much coast-to-coast warmth. By the time the air rotates around the low, it's rising, and we see ridging throughout. Cold air has nowhere to go. It's bottled up. But if we go to a negative EPO, which signs are saying that we could see this year at times, we have this. Here's our main player right here, a ridge of high pressure and warm air aloft over the Northeast Pacific and Alaska. If this builds up strong enough, we could see some cross-polar flow. And this Arctic high will be dislodged, will allow cold shots to intrude down south. The question is, will these cold shots go south, southeast, or southeast? That's the question. Will this be more of a, will this be an above average winter in terms of cold and snow for our friends in the northern plains, northern Great Lakes? What's the magnitude of these troughs? We just don't know, but at least the potential is there that we'll see some negative EPO action. The positive TNH really came to light during the 13-14 winter. That was the year of the snow dome here, but it was super cold in the east, and you'll take that. The axis of the warm air, the ridging, you can see those warm blobs off of Alaska. We go back again to our SSTs. We'll keep referencing it. We got some warmer pockets here underneath that cold pole, though. That's the thing. This needs to really decrease. These cooler temp anomalies need to moderate for me to feel better about our prospects this winter. I'll go ahead and close the NAO graphic there. Because you could see how we really need it to be warm to warm. The Gulf needs to be warm. The Gulf of Alaska, that is. The difference of a couple hundred miles can be crucial to not only where the axis ridge sets up, but where the troughs, how they invade, from what direction, from what angle. Will we have modified continental air coming down south, or will we have true Arctic air? We'll see. You'll note that in the TNH pattern, you got warm on the coasts, and you have cold shots kind of more in the middle, in the center of the CONUS, and that's, again, something that we'll probably see. These maps aren't valid for the 24-25 period. These are old maps, but kind of give you a picture of what we could expect. And you can see the southeastern ridge presence. I do think we're going to have a strong SCR this winter, which will kind of be rough for our friends on the East Coast, Mid-Atlantic, unfortunately. But the further west you go, closer to I-44, I think that's where the true battle zone will set up this year. So, quick add-on and point of clarification. When we talk about La Nina, we're talking about easterly trade winds moving from east to west, kind of brings the cooler temperature departures from South America closer to your date line. With El Nino, you have the reversal of those traditional easterlies, and then you have a west to east component, which is usually not typical. It brings the warm water over here in the north of Australia, and it propagates that to the east. So right now it's looking like the force of the easterlies is going to weaken, but not to the point where the westerlies take over. So I just wanted to make that clear. All right, we've talked about the negative EPO, the TNH. Let's talk about the QBO. The QBO, we're talking about what's happening at 10 millibars above our heads, how the trade winds, or not the trade winds, but the global air patterns, the global winds are how it's moving 30 kilometers up. Long story short, we have East QBO and West QBO, kind of similar to INSO, right? If we have an east-based QBO, that means that, and it's probably easier to like overlay this graphic and go back over here and just imagine the air in the Hudson Bay region where we see these warm SSTs, our NAO region, winds that are moving east to west. Well, what that's going to do is whatever the temperature profiles high above the air are here, that's going to compromise or kind of flow into what's happening over the western half of Canada. An east-based QBO is not good for the immediate east, the East Coast, New England. Not ideal. If it's west-based, then all of a sudden you have that cold Arctic air and it's moving from west to east, and suddenly the orientation of those cold shots have more of an eastern component of motion. So because we want to get the cold air dislodged not only going south, but east. And with a west-based QBO, you have that because it's moving west to east. But if it's moving east to west, then it's kind of like you have the cold air will be funneled. The cold air will be funneled more due south. So ultimately, this matters. What's happening in the stratosphere matters. We'll watch it. We'll see if there's any sudden stratospheric warming episodes triggered, which will allow the polar vortex to move south. But then again, even when you have an SSW, where the polar vortex goes, it's hard to pin down at this point. It can move. If it moves into Siberia, then we're not going to get the core of the cold on our side of the globe, and that could be a hindrance to us. So the QBO is not looking good for us, but the further west you go in Tennessee, the better. All right, so if we take a look at kind of how the MJ works, we're looking at where the enhanced tropical rainfall set up over the western Indian Ocean. And I'm trying to get this to render here, but this is a good website to reference, the met.gov.uk. This video here is very helpful for those who want to learn more about it, but you can see the different phases. And for us to have a better shot at winter weather here, we want the phases to be kind of 7, 8, and 1. Generally speaking, because you have drier air over on the other side of the globe in the western Indian Ocean, you have more storminess, more active subtropical jet potential. Where those greens and blues you see, where they are on the west or east side of the dateline, kind of will indicate where there's the possibility for storminess, essentially. So we want to see the browns west of the dateline over Australia, Thailand, Indonesia, all those places. We want to see the greens and blues on the east side of the dateline, north of the equator, because that will kind of be indicative that we're going to have plenty of storm potential systems that organize in the Gulf and slide up. And we need not only the temperatures to cooperate, but we need the precipitation to cooperate. And we're looking at precipitation patterns with the MJO specifically. So check out this website, check out the video. It explains more detail what the MJO is. It's hard to know for sure where it's going for the entire winter, but just know that phase 7, 8, and 1 are good for our region here in the Mid-South. All right, having said all that, the time has come to break down the winter for Middle Tennessee, specifically what will happen in December, January, and February. December 24, seasonal to slightly below seasonal, or slightly below average to start the first half. You saw the NAO diving sharply negative. I think that's going to impact our weather for the next few weeks, and will probably hold true to December 15th or so. The air mass will moderate closer to the holidays, and I do think we'll finish slightly above average, but not like to the point where like, oh man, December was super warm. I think rural areas could see negative anomalies for the month, but December and La Nina winters typically are the coolest comparative to normal. So we'll see how that evolves here, because again, the La Nina is actually hardly setting in. In fact, it's going to start to moderate, but it won't moderate until first quarter next year. So we have to factor that into December forecast. I do think that if the NAO can stay negative, we can get some cooler air intrusions, and snowfall is harder to predict than will it be warm, will it be cold, but 1 to 2 snowfall days where snowfall from the sky will be likely under 1 inch. I personally think we'll have a day of flurries here in Nashville. That should be our expectation anyway. Plateau, of course, you're going to see more. Jamestown, you could see a couple inches, really. Crossville, Monterey, that technically counts as Middle Tennessee. And then, of course, you have closer to the Kentucky border. There will be some opportunities to track a system or two. But I do think that we'll have a pretty seasonal month overall when you take the average of all locations. So let's move on to January 25. Above average in terms of temperatures. I think we're going to have a January thaw that the pattern will relax. Whatever it does in December, it's going to start to change in January. Temps will be 2 to 4 degrees above average for most. Doesn't mean that there will be some cold weeks, but I just think that we'll have more warm weeks than cool ones. That said, January is our coldest month, so I still think we could see a few more snowfall days with 1 to 3 inches locally, 3 to 6 on the plateau. That could be bullish, actually. It could be more 2 to 4, but I do think that they will get some upsloping benefits at times. And for us, I think we might see more rain, more precipitation as a subtropical jet becomes active, but I don't think we're going to have the necessary emergence of cold air and precipitation for January. I hope I'm wrong. February, though, I'm a bit more optimistic because I think that, again, ENSO is weakening. So I think we'll have a mild and stormy month, plenty of systems to track. And if we can get some well-timed cool shots, I think we'll be in business. Temps will average 1 to 3 degrees above average for most. So again, you can see how I'm skewing mild, warmer, but not way mild to the point where it's just going to be a blowtorch winter. Part of me is just playing safe based on temperature profiles in recent months. Like we had a 2-week window of winter that we really capitalized on in the winter of 23-24. January, a lot of locals around here in the Nashville area remember a huge big snow that perfectly timed. Everything came together for. But winter was still mild around that. The bookends of winter last year was warm, and that's been the pattern. Now, we've had stronger La Nina events that lended to, February being a very hyperactive month. We saw that in 21. We saw that at times again in 23 to a lesser extent northwest Middle Tennessee. We've in the awful winter of 1920, we had a snowfall the first week of February that year as well. So February can go either way, but I do think we'll have plenty to track, and that's the bottom line I want to convey here. So let's look at our kind of review our indicators that we talked about the first half of this video. We have a negative PDO in tandem with warm SSTs in the Pacific, except the equatorial Pacific, which is cooler, but we'll see. And then, of course, we have that cool blob of the Gulf of Alaska. Will that moderate? Who knows? But that's our negative PDO. We have a warm Atlantic. It's on fire. That's not good for us and the East Coast in general, especially the Mid-Atlantic and New England. ENSO, La Nina, La Nada. I mean, when you're talking about weak ENSOs, that could really go either way. We've had some great winters with weak ENSOs. We've had some meh winters with weak ENSOs. So that's not going to be the primary driver this year. The West-based QBO, not necessarily great for our region, especially East Tennessee, but if that could change in a heartbeat. You can go positive, negative, negative, positive. It could shift east base. So just for now, it's just looking like it's a west-based QBO. I think the MJO will be better this year, more favorable. Maybe there'll be less tropical development in the Indian Oceans in that region as we progress along. We'll see. But I think the MJO was so bad last year, we have room to go up and improve. And really the saving grace of this winter is the negative EPO, positive TNH potential. I think that could allow western ridging, whether it's right on the Pacific coast or off the Pacific coast on the ocean up towards Alaska. I think we could see some things that really helped us out in the winter of 2014, 2015. That's another great winter where we had a very tame first half. The second half was, that February, first half of March timeframe was just jam-packed with events, and we could see something like that. I didn't show any graphics relative to this, but we have decent snowpack and ice buildup over Arctic regions. Everything I've read about shows that we're on pace. We're not far behind. We're not way ahead. We're kind of right in the middle right now. So I don't think we were having to talk about a lack of snowpack in the Arctic and Siberian regions where, and even down here closer to home, Cascades, Rockies, what's happening in Washington, Idaho, Montana. I think we're doing fine. So I'm not worried about that. That's an intangible that is not going to swing my decision either way. So thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed a little bit of that. You can follow me on Facebook at Flash Weather. That's the best way to find updates. Hope to talk to you soon. And just if you have any questions, feel free to DM me at your convenience. Have a great weekend, everyone. Catch you on the fry as always. Peace.